Welcome to a new Thursday edition of a football show here on the 440 Sports Network. Thursday editions are going to be at 9 a.m. live. We are recording this morning, week number 1 for the Tennessee Titans. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Give him a follow at Nick Suss. Read all of his good stuff at the Tennessean. Really interesting stuff about Will Levis out this week and sort of how mayonnaise-flavored perfume and cologne could make him the face of the franchise. So, Nick, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about Levis. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff if you guys want to get into the nitty-gritty of how a man has survived an off-season.
Sinkers Beverages, of course, is our title sponsor. Make sure you shop local. Sinkers Beverages, locally owned and operated for over 30 years in East Nashville. 3-time defending liquor store champion in the city of Nashville, as voted on by you, the users of this great city. Their sister store, Bluegrass, of course, you've heard us talk about it on this show. Up in Hendersonville, serving the Hendersonville market for over 50 years. Good quality, locally owned businesses. Sign up for those. Sign up for the in-crowd at Sinkers Beverages. It's sort of a rewards program where you get inside information on allocations, drops, fancy new wines and specials, all kinds of events that show up at the store. You got tastings all the time. They're always doing something for you guys, so make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages and search Uber Eats and have the booze delivered directly to your house. Search Sinkers Beverages on Uber Eats. And in a previous iteration of the show, Nick, this is where the co-host would say something like, they drive so you can drink. I'm going to give you that line on the first try here. So let's see if you can do it. Hey, search Uber Eats, Sinkers Beverages, and have the booze, Nick, delivered directly to your house.
Yeah, they drive so you can drink.
That's exactly correct. Well done. Thank you for coming on the show. That's all we needed.
Yeah. Good pitch, man.
Obviously, the Bears game coming up. So if you're watching the game at home or at a friend's house or something like that, don't get in the car, guys. It's 2024. Like, don't get in the car. Send the booze directly to your house. Sinkers Beverages. Okay, so we're gonna get into a lot of stuff today. Obviously, part of the reason I wanted to work with you, Nick, is you and I have a very strange Venn diagram in the media world. Like, longtime SEC reporter for a lot of different markets in the conference. Of course, that's near and dear to my heart. And now covering the Tennessee Titans. So there's not many of us that have that sort of overlap. So I thought, you know what? Let's talk a little. We're going to sprinkle in some more SEC football on this episode on Thursdays. We'll talk a little college ball as well. But we're going to start with the Titans, of course. And I wanted to sort of run through like a bullet point list of sort of setting the bar for a few things heading into the season. And then we'll touch on the Bears game, and then we'll get to some SEC stuff. So sound good to you?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. And join us every single Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Normally, we will be live. Again, this is recorded. So, and if you're on the podcast app, please rate, review, subscribe, YouTube, thumbs up, share it on Twitter, Facebook, etc. Okay. I'm going to roll through a few things here, Nick. And I want you to give me sort of your season-long view of some of these options. Sure. So I want to know first, we'll start with the positive. We'll bounce back and forth. Heavy tunes, light tunes. The thing that the Titans will be better at than any one of us is expecting right now. What's the thing the Titans will be better at?
It's probably a boring answer, but I think they're going to be better run blocking than we expect. I don't know. There's been so much talk about the offensive line and the focus on pass blocking and fixing the front up there. And I do think they're going to be better there, but I think that everybody kind of expects that will be the case. I think there's an expectation that this team will be improved and closer to league average as pass blockers. I don't think there's been much talk about the run blocking looked really good during training camp. You and I were out there. They were probably a better run blocking unit than they were a pass blocking unit. And we kind of saw that validated in those 4 preseason drives with the first team up there. I think that it was a really impressive showing. And I think that whether it's Radens and Petit Frere on the right side, or you can trust that kind of trio on the left of Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, I think they're going to be creating holes. I don't know to what extent the run game is going to be the valuable driver of this offense that it has been for the last, 25 years of Titans football, minus the 2 Wisenhunt years. But I don't know, man. I do think that the front is actually going to be pretty solid to above average there.
I've said it a few times on the show. I think it's going to fans need to be patient with Latham, Skoronski, and then the right side, because they're all better run blockers right now, other than Cushenberry probably. Then they're going to be pass blockers. Eventually, Bill is going to develop all of that. But when you're Latham, the ability to lock onto someone and maul them, he should have that in spades. And Pollard is a veteran piece, and Spears is pretty dynamic already. So I think I agree with you. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on the run game early, and it's going to be a little bit more comfortable for them. And I agree. I think that's better than, I think it's sort of an underrated storyline in camp that they've done that. So I kind of agree with you on that one. All right. This one's kind of eye of the beholder to some degree.
Sure.
And you may have different players for each of these different adjectives. I'm interested in your favorite, the player you are personally most interested in sort of watching develop over the course of the season, the player you are most excited to see, the player that's sort of your favorite storyline to track. Those might be different. Those might all be the same. You have the ability to explore the studio space here, Nick.
Yeah, development is a loaded word because I think this player is fully developed, but Calvin Ridley is just the fascination for me. I think that when you cover a team or when you root for a team, you tend to be attracted to the thing that you've never had. And if you follow the Titans for any amount of time, they've never had this. Like this idea of just deep threat, traditional vertical route receiver. I think this is something that there have been players who filled the void. I'm not going to talk down on Nate Washington or Derek Mason or any of these guys, but like this is something that the Titans have not had in a long time. And watching him develop with a quarterback who really just wants to chuck the ball far is going to be utterly fascinating, because I don't know how much of his stuff with the Jags did you watch last year? Like
I've seen him a lot since Alabama, frankly, and he can do everything, but he certainly does things that this team's not had in a while, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating watching that there have been so many jokes and memes about the Jags' usage of him last year. I don't think it was that egregious. Dude had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, but like if you put him in a system that truly builds around him as a number one and doesn't use him as a decoy, like I do think that there's a world where this dude can end up with 1,300, 1,400 receiving yards in a perfect world. Now, obviously, perfect worlds don't come to pass all that often, but
where is this perfect world you speak of?
Yeah, I am just fascinated by a trajectory where he gets to be this run in space dude. He's so intriguing as a human being. Did you see the interview he did in the locker room with us yesterday talking about having to slow down?
I did not. Explain a little bit more.
It's fascinating. He was asked about how he can get better and how he can get more valuable with yards after catch. And he talked about, I want to go fast, I want to go fast, I want to go fast. But when the ball's in my hand, I have to think, oh, no, stop, think, slow down. Let's get around people. Let's not just go as fast as possible. And every time he's asked, like, so why do you think of that? Well, who made you think that? He's like, man, I got to slow down. I know that that's what's going to work. And they're like, so do you want to go slower on your routes? He's like, no, I got to go fast on the routes. and it's just this fascinating dichotomy of like, I think that his brain is probably 2 steps ahead of anyone's on the field, just because of how quickly he can process things and how quickly he can match his speed to his hands, to his footwork, and the sideline stuff he does. I just think he is a supreme talent, but it's just a matter of figuring out how do you take advantage of that supreme talent. And you have 2 guys in Hopkins and Boyd who are just so traditionally possession guys, strong guys, point of attack guys. And then you got Ridley, who's just like a wind up the toy and let it see what happens.
So I had not heard sort of somebody describe him that way. I had not heard himself describe that way. But what's interesting is, would you? This is the beauty of like the digital long form conversation. Sometimes you just need to workshop stuff live. Yeah. Do you think that is in part why he can occasionally feel like or look like he is getting bored? Like, is there like, so when we're talking about, and I don't mean that like in a negative way. I mean like, hey, I didn't run on that route, or hey, I don't always run hard. These are things that he's kind of alluded to. Some of the times where maybe in Atlanta or in Jacksonville, where maybe it was a little bit disconnected, or maybe he wasn't fully engaged, or whatever you want to say. Like, I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm just saying there's been these little moments of that. A lot of times when you have somebody who is so smart and so good at what they do, that if the rest of the things around them are not constantly keeping them, I mean, I have a daughter like this, constantly keeping them engaged, that it leads to sort of drifting sometimes. Is that maybe that's totally out of line with this situation? I don't know. Maybe, what do you think?
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I'm looking for an exact quote that he said. I have a document, if you guys want to get way too into the journalistic process, of literally every quote that I've typed out in the year 2024. So I'm looking for the word here. Here are some things that he said in August that are direct quotes that I just find fascinating. First, I don't think I'm faster than everybody, but I think my play speed is pretty fast. I think I play fast, so I think Will gets it. I tell coach, don't take me out, let me get the reps. I'll deal with it another day if I'm sore or not. I just want to run for him. I've just got to get the reps because every day might not be the same. Will, just throw it. I'm at least going to make a play. This year I expect to come down with most of the balls. I've played football a little while. I could run this field with a blindfold without stepping out of bounds. I just know where the sideline is. It's pretty easy to keep myself in bounds. You play football so long, you know the sideline's not going to change. I just kind of figure out where it is and get my feet to stick and tap on one. It works out sometimes.
It's very meta.
And then this is 2 or 3 days later. He's talking again. And I have him at, we've got it down, man. This is in reference to deep balls not connecting. We've just got to run. We've got it down. I promise we've got it down. You're slow some days. You come out some days and you run fast. It's not about being slow every day. I've got this. We've just got to run and get there. It's literally right there. A little more strain, that's really it. And I think about the split and the separation on those two ideas of, I'm fast, man. I'm fast. I know what I'm doing. I've got this connection. And then 3 days later, I'm just slow some days. There's a inscrutable quality to the way he talks about his own ability. I don't think I'm the fastest player. I'm just faster in the game than some people. But some days I'm slow, which is human. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that is not conceivable. It'd be strange if some people weren't faster or slower on certain days. But I often use the word mercurial to describe Hop. And Ridley has a little bit of that too. I think the best receivers are all a little bit mysterious. But yeah, there's a mystery to what it is he does and how he does it.
It's going to be fascinating to watch because he certainly feels like both of those guys fit Will Levis's skill set. The question is, does the offense and the quarterback and the receivers all fit together? We shall see, especially with an offensive line that, as we've already alluded to, will probably be better at run blocking to start the season than anything else. All right, that's it. That was an interesting journey we just went on with Calvin Ridley, so we'll have some fun with that. All right, so for me, and you and I have talked about this. And I'm always fascinated by what people gravitate towards, fans in particular. What drives in, not like from like a social media enragement standpoint, but like what captures people's attention. And T'Vondre Sweat he's just captured everyone's attention for maybe reasons that are unfair and maybe reasons that are very fair. So I'm fascinated by his development over the course of the season. I also think he can be a critical piece because we're about to get to my next question is going to be, what are the areas that you are most concerned about with this team? And my answer on Monday with PK was the front seven. The thing that concerns me the most is their ability to pressure the quarterback and stop the run, consistently drive in and drive out. Depth at linebacker, pass rusher, it's all a major question. But the thing that could help answer some of those questions the most is T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons being healthy for most of the year. So it's about his development. It's about his personality. It's about his all the storylines that are probably unfair to him about game shape and everything else. There's no reason to think that it's not going to be fine. He's been a starter every day in camp, sort of like J.C. Latham. There's not really been a question about either of those two. So if I ask you what's the area you're most concerned with, my answer and most interested in from a player development standpoint, Will Levis is an easy answer. But the reason you went Ridley is because your mind is searching for something deeper. And I think Sweat is one of those pieces as well, while also still being a name that people are obsessed with. That people just gravitate towards him naturally. So my area of concern, we can get to the secondary, the offensive line. There's lots of things we could talk about, but to me, it is the front seven is the biggest area of concern for this team. Depth is an easy, vague answer as well. So where are you going if I ask you that question?
Quick diversion on Sweat. You want another fun locker room quote from yesterday?
Please. Do I?
Plugging a story that you guys can read on Tennessean. Something I remembered the other day. Titans obviously playing against Caleb Williams in his debut. Do you, Mr. College Football fan, recall the last time Caleb Williams had a fun little debut, kind of was announced to the world?
You're talking about his first game at Oklahoma against Texas when he came off the bench for Spencer Rattler. Is that correct?
When Tavondre Sweat and Keandre Coburn were both on the Texas Longhorns, and Keandre was actually on the field. If you remember that 66-yard run he had on his first ever snap, if you remember the person diving at his ankles trying to get him, that was Keandre Coburn.
Keandre Coburn. All right, I thought my recall was good, but that was, you just topped me there. I like that.
I watched the play a bunch yesterday to write this story, but so I asked Sweat about it, and Sweat's one of those guys who you can tell the things that motivate him are a little bit weird and specific. But I asked him any memories from that game against Caleb Williams, and this is his response. It is what it is. Horns up always. I don't like when he said horns down. I know Roshan said something in that room, but I mean, he's a good player. He's a heck of a player. I can't wait to go out there and play against him. So if we want to make the theme of this that college beef continues into the pros, I think there's a little bit of leftover there.
I would hope so with those two teams.
Those guys.
The other, it's fascinating. I think Sweat also is going to have this fascinating personality. Again, like right. Ridley, I think, you see his ability to sort of like take some ball busting in the locker room and kind of like give it back and kind of play it up with like on those little clips that they're putting out where he's clearly engaged and having fun with it. And people like giving him a hard time, which generally is an indication that they like him in the locker room. So like, I think it's, I could see he's very loyal to Texas, which I appreciate. And he's obviously super loyal to his family. I think his mother is like his number one confidant. That's the only person he talks to about games, good or bad. He's going to be a fascinating character in this whole saga and this whole story. And that's probably too much to put on a guy when, you're a rookie, a defensive lineman at that. You don't like stuff the stat sheet. And, he's going to have this other storyline, whether it's fair or not, about his shape. There's a chance he's perfectly in shape every game, and it's a non-story. So, we just have to wait and see. But what about area you're concerned about? Give me a quick answer on that one. Are you the same front seven?
No, it's cornerback. Defensive backs broadly. I think Snead's going to be really good. I have no doubts there. I think that broadly, when we've talked about reinvigorating this team, we have kind of papered over the fact that some of the dudes they brought in the secondary were not super great last year. I am sure that it will be upgraded because of how good Snead can be, but I am not necessarily convinced that the rest of the unit is upgraded.
I think it was, oh God, I need to make sure I cite my source here. I think it was the Mays and those guys on the football show, I think.
Sure.
I guess it's not a football show, it's the football show. Direct competitor. But I think they called it creaky. It has a chance to be creaky, and I thought that was a good adjective for this because Adams and Diggs and Snead and Awuzie are all either up in age or injury prone. Awuzie is not fully healthy. I agree with you. I think Snead is the least of my concerns. Hooker, we know what he is, but he's also dealt with injuries in the past. There's just a chance. There's a chance it's creaky by midseason, which I think is a good word for it.
The funny thing about secondary work is like last year when Hooker got hurt for a little bit, I ran the numbers on the Titans with and without Hooker in the last 3 years, and they have statistically been better without a really good safety. Like it's tricky to kind of predict just how valuable safety play is. So I don't want to leave Quandre or Adams or Hooker, any of these guys on a shelf. I remember an NFL analytics survey that ESPN did in 22, where they surveyed maybe 20 or 30 analytics staffers. And one of the questions was, what is the position we know least about? And by a wide margin, safety was the winning answer. Like it's hard to quantify exactly what the value of a safety is. It's very easy to quantify what the value of a cornerback is. And if you look at who Chidobe Awuzie was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, I don't think in his career he's had back-to-back seasons where his passer rating when targeted was within like 30 points of each other year over year. Like it's just it's a fluctuant position. There's a lot that changes there. And basing your entire secondary on your entire defense on we've got a lot of guys who can cover and that's going to help us get home. It's a precarious position to be in.
Yeah, no question about it. All right. So Sinkers Beverages here before we move on to a couple more questions. Sinkers Beverages, our primary sponsor. Go check them out. Search Uber Eats. Join the in-crowd. Follow them on the socials as well. That's where you'll get a lot of information about, like, hey, on Fridays, we're having a tequila tasting. Come on in. Or, hey, we've got this new wine special. Or, hey, we've got these special bourbons. We're dropping Blanton's Gold today. Come on in and buy one. There's only 4 bottles. Hurry up. That's where you're going to find a lot of that stuff. Follow them on Instagram and Twitter, of course, as well. So, and quickly, the show itself, much like the secondary for the Titans, look, we know this show has been very, very good, but it's going to be better when Nick has some audio and video set up for you guys. So I just want to point that out, just to remind everybody that we're going to do a better job for you guys. Okay.
We will do a much better job when I figure out how to plug things in. It is,
yes.
You guys could see the setup at my feet of all of the loose wires that I don't know what to do with.
Please, just be careful with them. Okay.
I've
got two dogs running around. I'm just hopeful that they're not chewing on those wires in my room. So we'll see. Either way, go to Sinkers Beverages. And again, we appreciate you guys hanging out. We're going to do this every single Thursday at 9 a.m. So, okay. And Tennessean, please make sure you go Tennessean.com and go subscribe and read all of Nick's work over there. We'll get to, this is probably a reason I mentioned that is because I think I wanted to ask the 2 questions about, like, why this Titans team could overachieve and why they might underachieve. I want to know why you think that could happen, not like if it's going to happen. I think that's the more interesting question. But as soon as you start thinking about why this team could overachieve expectations, why they could maybe get to 500 or challenge for a wild card spot or any of that, it's hard to go beyond the quarterback.
Right.
Because if the quarterback hits all the stuff he's supposed to do, or even 3/4 of the way through the stuff he's got, they have the supporting cast around him. And if the scheme is sound, it's hard to not just say, if the quarterback is pretty good and takes a big step and manages the offense, they've got a chance to overachieve. That's there's not really another reason, I feel like.
The psyche that is Will Levis is just utterly fascinating. And I have not yet figured out what it is about him, what that one quality is that makes him such a lightning rod. But I spent a good chunk of this offseason trying to just chronicle every single thing that he did to position himself to be a dude in the NFL. And a lot of it's working out. Like, I'm not going to pretend that most of it isn't watching film and throwing, but, like, if the story I alluded to at the top, if you guys want to check it out on Tennessee, and it's going to be in the paper on Sunday too, I kind of just went through step by step every single thing that Levis did, every place he appeared at, every event he was a figure in, to try and get to the bottom of who the Titans have as their new face of the franchise. And it's interesting, the psyche that is Will Levis. Like, I got a quote from Phil Mickelson in there of him talking about how he could immediately tell that Levis is the right kind of competitor and how he's always going to root for Levis because of one round of golf they played together. And I asked Levis about it. He's like, yeah, that's the worst round of golf I shot all off season. He must have noticed how angry I was about missing shots and thought I was a good competitor. And so Will's good friends with Kenny McPeak. I don't know if there's horse racing people here, but he's the guy who trained the horses who won both the Oaks and the Derby this year in the same weekend. First time that's happened since the 50s.
As any good Kentucky quarterback does.
Yeah. And so they're good friends. They've known each other since literally the day Will moved into Lexington. They met that day at Keeneland. And
so hang on, this also tells us something about Will Levis. The first day he's in Lexington, he's at Keeneland.
He took a tour with his family of Keeneland.
Oh, okay.
And he met Kenny at the stables. And Kenny tells me the story of the first time they met. Kenny, not as plugged into the roster dynamics at UK as any diehard message board poster would be. And Will says, yeah, well, I came here to be the starting quarterback. And Kenny says, well, yeah, good luck with that, kid. And then 2 weeks later, Will's named the starting quarterback. And they see each other again a couple of weeks later. And Will says, well, yeah, my real plan is I'm going to be here for 2 years and then I'm going to be in the league. And Kenny says, well, yeah, good luck with that, kid. And it happens. And so their conversations kind of morph. And eventually they have this bet of what's going to happen first. Kenny wins the Kentucky Derby or Will wins a Super Bowl. And clearly Kenny won. He won his Kentucky Derby. Will did not have a chance. He has not played in a playoff game yet. But I asked Kenny about that bet, And he just goes, Will has what I would describe as a power aura. And he is somebody who, when he sets his mind to something, it's gonna happen. So there is this inevitability in his brain of just the way Will thinks. He said he was going to start at Kentucky. He did. He said he was going to be there 2 years and he got into the league. He did. Now he says he's going to be a star. I think he will. And it's hard to reconcile that with, I asked Will point blank, one word to describe this opportunity you have. And he said, unimaginable. I'm like, buddy, you seem like an imaginer. You seem like a guy who has a plan. And reconciling that humble
perspective
side of him with the dreamer side, he's a fascinating cat. And we can talk mayonnaise, we can talk camping, we can talk all this stuff. I've got a bunch of fun stories that you guys can read, but he's fascinating.
I mean, not to go too psychology here, but I've lived for 10 or 11 years with a total empath who's a psych major who works in team development. And what's fascinating is to have that type of perspective. I think certainly the raw talent and the gifts and the drive and the ambition and all that stuff counts, but to have that kind of perspective packaged with the confidence and the stuff I sort of think is what allows you to see both sides of the equation, which is to see, I'm going to will this into happening based on all these things, but also I have the perspective to understand the opportunity that I have and sort of what it means. I think it leads to his, for lack of a term, lack of giving a shit when it comes to being silly, being funny, trolling on the internet, the mayonnaise stuff, the banana stuff, all this stuff that's not really real. He knows it's not real. He's just kind of having fun. You have to sort of be comfortable in your own skin and have some self-awareness to do that stuff. And it sounds like to be able to say man, this is an opportunity that no one gets. I can't believe I'm doing this and I'm going to go do it.
Right.
I agree with you. It's an interesting combo.
One of the most telling things that he said, I sat down with him for probably 25, 30 minutes. One of the most telling things he said, I asked him about the rare occasions when he's been out on Broadway and all the cell phone cameras catching him. And he reflects for a second. And at the end of a long quote, he goes, and look, as long as I'm not an idiot, nothing bad's going to happen. And
self-awareness,
it's self-awareness, but it's also I don't have that opinion about the world. I control the world narrative of oh, as long as I'm good, everything good's going to happen. You have to have a really high level of self-awareness and also just self-esteem to be able to be oh, I'm controlling everything. It's good.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's that this is interesting. I don't think it's as much I'm controlling everyone else is that I know I can only control me.
Sure.
And if I control me, I'm comfortable with whatever happens.
Right.
And that's a really look. You're right. He's an absolutely fascinating dude. All right, we can spend a lot of time. Go read the story. Really good stuff. Nick wrote it on the Tennessean, and it'll be out in the paper. That's pretty cool. I didn't know we had those still, Nick.
Those exist. You can pick one up.
Especially on Sundays. So my answer on what could make this team a top 5 draft pick team, much worse, underachieving, 3 to 5 wins maybe, which would be a very bad season. I don't normally blame coaches for much of anything in professional sports. I think they have an impact. I think they can take a 8-win roster and make it a 10-win roster if they're good. I think a bad coach can take an 8-win roster and make it a 6-win roster if they're bad. But I think largely you are going to achieve what your talent says you are. And the Titans are a 7 to 9 win roster, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I think if the coaching staff, in particular Denard Wilson, Brian Callahan, and Bill Callahan, if they are very good at their jobs, 2 of which have never done this before, if they're very good at their jobs and dependable and they elevate players around them, I think they're going to be fine. The team is going to show progress and we'll see some things that we like. If they are not good at their jobs, play calling, namely, and leading both sides of the offense and defense, that's where I think you could see a team get to 3 and 4. If the jobs are too big for Denard Wilson and Brian Callahan, that's where I think this team could underachieve its win total and get to 5 wins and then be picking in the top 5. Otherwise, all the stuff on the roster sort of is what it is. Depth, injuries, we've already been through it. To me, it's about the coaching staff that could lead them to be bad. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that's the reason that would happen.
You guys are going to hear me say this a lot during the season of doing these shows, so get used to it. But I have a firm philosophy that there's nothing wrong with being average. in this league, you should kind of strive to at least be average. And my philosophy on coaching in the pro level and the college level, whatever it is, if you don't have a top 5% coach or a bottom 5% coach, it probably doesn't matter. Like at a certain point, coaching is coaching. Like everybody's running the same scheme. Everybody has the same access to film. It's not 1963 anymore where you can find this one play on this one cut up that nobody else knows about. Everything's been flattened. And that's not to say that these guys can't be top 5% or bottom 5%. But like, if we're saying that there's maybe 4 or 5 coaches who are good or bad enough to actually affect a game in my worldview, I am pretty confident in saying they're not going to be that good or that bad in year one. Yeah. And from that, it's up to the players. Like you're right. It's a production league. It's a winning with players league. And the Titans, I would say 6 to 10 instead of 7 to 9 level of win talent on this roster. I might have a little more variance than you, but yeah, it's going to be up to the players because I think the coaches will be up to the task of at least being league competent.
Are you closer to 6 or are you closer to 10? I think 10's asking a lot.
I'm closer to 6. I'm on 6 right now, but
okay.
I can be talked up to 7 or 8, but I'm still on 6.
Is that behind the Colts and 4th in the division, or is that ahead of the Colts and 3rd in the division in your mind?
I can't say I've reconciled that answer yet because I don't think that the gap between 2 and 4 is all that large. I will lump the Jags in with the Colts and the Titans. I think that all 3 of these teams have pretty sizable question marks. The difference is just the Colts have a question mark because they haven't changed very much, and the Titans and Jags have a question mark because they have changed a bunch. But I do think. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to say PK's not buying into this, but I think the Colts are going to look like the old Titans. It's going to be. I think they are going to be like while the league is going one direction, I think the Colts are going to go big power run game, lean on the offensive line, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and I think it's going to be Sirianni's very creative with the rushing attack. I don't know if it means they are better than people think. They still could be 4th place, and Richardson still has to prove he can stay healthy, but turn the ball over maybe a little bit too in the passing game. I just think they're going to lean. They're going to go sort of old school offense, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch if it works while sort of everyone else is going the other direction.
I was really impressed by the Colts last year just from their ability to play in games that they probably didn't belong in, which you can look at that from the old school perspective of, oh, they've got great grit, they've got great coaching. You can look at it from the new school perspective of, oh, there's regression to a mean that playing close is luck. I don't know which one it is. I am not going to purport that I am the soothsayer here, but like, trust me, I liked what I saw from them last year. That doesn't mean I'm convinced I'm going to see it again. Titans
fans will never say anything good about the Colts. Here's the thing. Is Anthony Richardson better than Gardner Minshew? I think the answer is yes, Nick.
I do too, but I want to see him do it. Like
at what is the question?
I want to see Anthony Richardson be good before I say he's good, because I know he's talented. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind he is. I want to see it. I want to see him play 3 games in a row.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk a little Bears here real fast. Look, I am not going to ask you most weeks. I am not going to ask you for a prediction. I think to your point about everything in the league being sort of is what it is. Almost every game, with the exception of like maybe the Chiefs or maybe the Patriots, elite and terrible, and they don't play those 2 teams. I'm just using those 2 teams as the barometers here in the AFC. Basically, every game is a 4 to 6 point spread, and you have a chance to win every game based on penalties, turnovers, a bad bounce, a good bounce, etc. So ultimately, what I want to know about the game is like, what is it that you want to learn about the Titans in this matchup? Is it about the front seven's ability to stop a quarter? Is it the secondary matching up with a really talented collection of receivers and running backs and tight ends and a quarterback that can sling it? Is it about being able to run the football against a team that's, got some pass rushers but doesn't have a lot of run stuffers? Like what is the thing that matters the most in the outcome of this game? Take away the score, take away the 1 or the 0 in the win or the loss column. What is the most important part of this game you want to know afterward on Monday?
Yeah, it's the defense. It's the secondary matching up against Moore, Allen, Odunze, Kmet, etc. I think that we understand the stat that everybody's been throwing out about rookie quarterbacks, number one quarterbacks in their debuts. We understand it's tough. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Caleb Williams is the second coming. He's obviously going to overcome that. But I do think that usually when you're the number one pick, you don't have the weapons that this dude has day one. He's in a really good position. And if the Titans have to play a lot of man coverage, if they have to play a lot of, let's say, Sneed's on Moore and McCreary's on Adunze and Awuzie is on Allen, if that has to be the situation, I really want to see that. I want to see how this works. I want to see how Diggs and Hooker play deep. I want to see how Jamal Adams fits into this. I want to see if Harold Landry and Arden Key are reinvigorated in any way under a new system. I want to see how Ernest Jones and Kenneth Murray are deployed as blitzers and as run stoppers. I'm deeply, deeply fascinated by what all is going to happen with this defense, because I think they're more talented than last year's unit. I am not yet convinced that this is an 11-1 yet. I think I need to see more of how this coheses. Is that the word? Cohedes? Cohesiveness?
Grows together?
how it meshes, how it gels.
Come on, wordsmith. Come on.
I use a lot of made-up words. I actually do have a budget with my editor of how many made-up words I get per month. So check it out.
What's the number per story?
I usually get 2 to 3 per month that they're like, yeah, you can make up that word. We know.
Oh, okay. All right.
So keep an eye out. If you guys read everything I write, you'll find 2 to 3 made-up words per month.
I like that.
Yeah, I want to see how everything works, because I don't know how the defense's identity is going to develop quite yet.
Here's my very specific, bizarre prediction for this. I think your Titans fans are going to be excited about how they use Jones and Adams, and I can't remember the other player you mentioned, but those two in particular, Murray on the blitz. I think Wilson's good at that. I think all three of those players are good at that. And I think it's going to be, fans are going to be like, oh, look at them get pressure with these three guys, because they can't do it with their outside linebackers other than basically Landry and occasionally Key. I think people are going to be excited about, oh, that was a really nice call. That was a good play. I don't think they're going to get home. I think they're going to create pressure, but I don't think they're going to get home. And I think Williams makes things happen. And then you're going to be like, well, you better stick to those receivers for an extra second and a half. And that's hard to do when you've got talent like the Bears do. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how the results of those passes are going to work. I just think it's hard to get home on Caleb Williams. You're right. So I think you're going to be excited about the scheme and excited about the players and their skill sets in those moments. But Williams has the ability to sort of just foil those really smart decisions and plays by the defense. It's a very specific prediction, but all right. All right. So quickly in the SEC, this is why I wanted to work with you too, because we get to get to stretch some other muscles here on the show. And I'm just curious, what do you think was most real? Nico had a huge debut. Jackson Arnold looked really good. You got all these quarterbacks debuting. Diego Pavia, hype train. I'm officially leading that train all summer long. I think he's a really fun piece of entertainment that Vanderbilt fans and the Vanderbilt University should be marketing at a high level to the people of Nashville. He is a fun asset. This is entertainment. I think what was real? LSU, Florida, Texas A&M all lose. Georgia dominates. What was the thing that you thought was the most accurate about week one in the SEC?
Oh, deeply boring answer, but Georgia's defense being a steamroller. That's just inevitable. That was very real. I listened to that game on the radio. I watched that game. I was paying attention in any way that I could. Georgia's defense is just, I realize I'm wearing red and black now as I'm saying this. I'm sorry.
And went to Georgia.
I did go to Georgia. I have been accused many, many times of being a not fan, and you're right. But I don't know. That steamroller, that defense was something else. I think Nico is for real. I really do think that's an elite level talent there. I like Jackson Arnold a bunch. I can go through a lot of SEC teams. If you guys want to talk about LSU for a second, I don't think they looked bad. That was a team that played pretty darn well. That's a good team.
I think Garrett Nussmeier was very much in control. I think they could win 9 games. It's fascinating. I thought, and I've said this on other shows, I think LSU and USC's game was extremely accurate, that both of those teams are exactly what we saw. Yeah. They're both pretty good, but they're not elite, but they're definitely not bad. And that they've made progress on defense, and that Garrett Nussmeier is a pretty good quarterback. So it's weird to watch a game in week one and be like, all of that seems true.
Yeah. If you guys truly want to get mad at me, listeners, watchers of this, I have been for about a month now beating the drum that USC is going to win 11 games this year.
Stop.
And then I saw that first game, and I'm like, oh God, I might not have been shit posting here. Like that might be real.
I think they're like 9, but that's pretty close to 11. The keys are going to be like they play Michigan, and that game was sort of overlooked in the preseason. I think they play Michigan in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's very early. They're the toughest games on the schedule right now. They've got Michigan very early.
And we're about to talk about this because Tennessee's got NC State, Texas has got Michigan. I think those are actually very uninteresting football games. I think Texas is going to maul Michigan, and I think Tennessee could just outpace NC State with tempo. And I'm not sure either of those two games is very close. I would take Texas and Tennessee to lay the points, both UTs. I think the underbelly of the SEC this week is far more interesting. South Carolina, Kentucky is fascinating. I think Arkansas, they look good in week 1, but I don't think they're good enough to hang with Oklahoma State.
Mississippi State, Arizona State. That game's fascinating.
9:30 p.m. Central Standard God's time. Very much an interesting game. We're going to have a lot to say, I think, next week on any SEC show and on this show about Mississippi State, about Auburn. Peyton Thorne was incredible in week 1, again, against Air. We'll find out against Cal this week, and then Arkansas and Kentucky and South Carolina. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the underbelly, the middle class of the SEC this weekend than we will about Texas or Tennessee. I think Texas and Tennessee are going to handle their business this weekend. I just think they're too fast for Michigan and NC State. But to go back to Michigan, USC Michigan coming up in a couple of weeks, and Michigan did not look the part, and that's why I think Texas is going to. I just think they're in different. You know what? You know how you have a relationship, Nick, and there's two different people that are in two different places, sometimes, and it just doesn't work. Sure. I feel like that's where Michigan and Texas are. Like they're just in different places of their relationship. Michigan is on the mend and Texas is surging.
The one thing I'd be wary about, and some people who follow Michigan pretty closely told me about this the other day, and I think they're generally right. Michigan has a knack for not showing what they are until the very last moment when they need to.
That's true.
I don't want to project based on them looking a little bit crummy in week 1, because they always look a little bit crummy. Like they looked a little bit crummy until the Alabama game last year. Like they didn't really.
I don't know.
They were on offense for sure. Like remember that
they dominated Penn State without having to throw a pass.
I know, and it still looked a little bit crummy. It was dominant,
right.
but it also just like
I just think when you take 15 guys and put them into the league and your coaching staff and your assistants, I just think you're different. You're not the same person anymore. You're different. Texas has evolved into the next stage of the relationship, and Michigan is still out partying. Like literally, they're still drunk from January. I think.
Yeah, we will see how much Texas has evolved as they get into the SEC schedule. I think they're still a 10 or 11 win team. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to put them at the top of the league quite yet.
And I know Tennessee fans are over their skis about a game against UT Chattanooga, but like two things can be true. One data point in week 1 is not enough information to decide something, and also he could be very special and probably is very special. So I'm a big believer in him. I think they're going to beat NC State. I think the real test comes in 2 weeks against Oklahoma on the road. We'll find out about that against the Brent Venables defense. But otherwise, I think like South Carolina, Beamer's in trouble this year. I'm going to say it now in week 1. That was a terrible performance. Should have lost to ODU. They're a 10-point underdog against Kentucky. That's a big number in a rivalry game between those two. So I don't know. Keep an eye on Arkansas and Auburn and Mississippi State. Alabama against Alex Golish. That could be interesting there too. South Florida, see what they do on offense. Not a close game, but interesting from a scheme standpoint. All right, what kind of coverage you got for the Titans coming up each week? Give yourself some love here.
Yeah, rundown of what you guys can expect. Every Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the week, you're going to get something bigger picture, like I did with Levis this week. I think next week it's going to be a little bit more home game stadium focused. So hopefully we'll have a nice little update on how all that construction's going. But we'll keep having those throughout the year as you guys
yes, we will.
Want to dig a little bit deeper into the Titans and all of the things surrounding them. Beyond that, I'll have probably 5-6 stories out of Sunday's game, 3 to 4 stories every day. One thing I've made this joke my entire life. I've never aspired to be Barry Bonds. I'm fine being Ichiro, just most times getting a single.
One of the greatest hitters of all time. That's very humble of you.
I said aspire. I didn't say I am. Like I've always aspired to be a prolific singles hitter. All so right. Every once in a while, you're going to get some really big stuff, but you're going to get a lot of singles from me. I just want to be Jeff. I just want to be Jeff McNeil. You know,
that's fun.
That's fun. I've also often said I aspire to be Marvin Lewis. So again, shooting for the middle, really shoot for the middle.
The guy's got a lot of jobs over the years.
Job security, man. But no, we're going to have a lot of coverage, everything from injury reports to what I talked about of that Texas-Oklahoma connection to some stuff with the Callahan family that Paul Scarbina, my coworker, wrote a great story. I want to plug that too. He sat down with Bill and Brian and talked about their familial history and found some really cool artifacts from their past. So a lot of cool stuff you guys can check out at the Tennessean and read myself, Gentry, Paul. We got a lot of Titans coverage and it's a one-stop shop for a lot of cool stuff.
Very good stuff. And look, Sinkers Beverages, locally owned and operated, 3-time liquor store of the year in Nashville, as voted on by you, the users of the liquor store. So go check them out. They're your home for all your game day needs. And of course, any parties you got going on, be safe, be smart in light of the NHL tragedy this week. And just have the booze delivered directly to your house. You can search Uber Eats and they'll deliver the booze directly to your house, Nick.
Directly to your house. They drive so you don't have to, or something like that. I listen.
Close. It's pretty good.
I listen.
We're gonna get some reps. So, all right. What's also, by the way, check out all the great Tennessee. And part of the reason I wanted to work with you is how thoughtful you are and how you see the things that most people don't see, and that's why you're an excellent reporter and excellent writer. So go check out his stuff. All the other shows across the 440 Sports Network. If you want more SEC content, myself, Stephen Godfrey, who I know you know pretty well, through all your different college beat overlaps and interests, Godfrey and I do an SEC Football Live on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. You can check that out. Every Thursday back in the 1 o'clock slot is going to be Paul Kaharski, the Paul Kaharski podcast, taking over for a football show at that 1 o'clock time slot. You got the Hot Read podcast with Stoney Keeley and JT, of course, JT Runke on Tuesdays and Fridays. You got the Music City Audible on Mondays and Wednesdays. You got a football show back on Mondays at 3 o'clock to recap all the stuff that took place in the Titans-Bears game with me and Paul Kaharski, and then the Gold Standard covering your Nashville Predators on Wednesday. So there's live contents, pods, and video all the time. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Share the show. Tell everybody about it. All that great stuff. Otherwise, I think, Nick, that's it. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy week one. You got great coverage coming up on Sunday and Monday. And then we'll be back on Thursday next week. So thanks for hanging out, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the year. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. For Nick, I am Braden. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.